Now that we've got the basic idea of how Android Wear apps work, we're going to see how we can adapt them to different watch faces, as well as making our first simple interactive Android Wear app. So as we noticed in the previous video, we've got something called a watch view stub here over in the main activity Java file, and we can see it again if we look in the activity main layout file. So if we look in the text version, you can see we've got an Android support wearable view watch view stub here. So a stub is essentially a container which will contain, in this case, one of two layouts, either the rectangular layout or the round layout. And you can see both of those are referenced here in the XML. So the stub essentially detects the shape of the user's watch and displays the rectangular or round layout respectively. The rectangular and round layouts themselves are all pretty straightforward and full of things that we're used to, things like text views. The one thing to notice which is different from what we've had before is that we can have the same ID for a text view, for example, in the rectangular and the round layouts. So here the ID of this text view is text, and here it's also text. So before we've had to have different IDs for every object, but with Android Wear we have the same ID, or we can have the same ID in the rectangular and round layouts. And that's so that we can, in our code, access those user interface elements with a single find view by ID, rather than having to look for different objects in the different layouts. So as I say, the stub works out which shape of watch we're working with and then inflates the appropriate layout, either rectangular or round. You might be wondering how we establish in code which layout we're working with, and there's a number of different ways to do that, but the simplest that I've found is to give layouts an ID. So for example, here we've got our linear layout. So I can give that an ID of rect layout. Then with the round activity, I could give that an ID of round layout. Then once we've done that, we can detect which layout is in use by looking for example, find view by ID, r.id.rect layout, and if that's not null, then that means we've got a rectangular layout. And if it is, then we've got a round layout with a T on the end. So let's just give that a quick try. We're running it, I believe, in the Square emulator, as that's the one that we used most recently. So we should see in the logs rectangular layout when it launches. And there we go, just scrolling up there, you can see rectangular layout. Super. So time for a quick challenge for you, and this will be making your first interactive watch app. It's going to be very, very basic. All we're going to do is create a new project or a new app, and we want a button on each of the layouts, which when the user presses it, it shows them via a toast whether they've got a rectangular or a round watch screen. So not a particularly useful app, one that will test and make sure that you've got the idea of how different layouts all work together. Okay, so simple app with a button in the middle that when you press it, it tells the user via a toast whether they've got a rectangular or round watch. Go for it. Alright, hope that went well. I'm going to start, of course, with a new project. And I'll call it square or round. Should probably be rectangular or round, but square or round will do. Choose Android Wear, blank Wear activity, and the default options. So here we go. I'll start by putting in the button to the rectangular activity. So it works in just the same way as normal Android development. And for the square activity, you can see we've got a linear layout here, a vertical linear layout. So by default, the button will just appear immediately below the text there. So I'm going to get rid of the text and just have our button. There we go. And because it's the only interface element we're going to have, I'll call it button. And I'll change the text to show watch shape. There we go. And the on click will also be show watch shape. And then, because I want exactly the same button in the round activity, I'll just copy the code from the text or the XML and then paste it in. In fact, I can just replace the text view with it. There. There we go. What I might do this time though is drag it to the center so that it's completely centered in the round watch. Alright, now just time to write a little bit of code. So the button had an on click of show watch shape. I'm going to get rid of the text view now, as we're not using that anymore. And then we'll create our method show watch shape, which, just as with normal Android, called by a view, i.e. the button. And then we want to detect what shape the watch has. So I'm going to assume a rectangular shape. So my message by default is going to be rectangular. And then I'm going to go to the round activity, give the relative layout there an ID of round layout, and then we're going to look for the existence of the round layout. So if find view by ID r.id.round layout is not null, then we'll change message to round, and then either way we'll toast. So create a new toast in exactly the same way as with normal Android with the message. There we go. Simple as that. Let's give it a go. We'll start on the round device. See if it gets it right. And there we go. So let's tap the show what shape button and you can see we've got round appearing there. That all looks as desired. Let's just go back, stop that, and run it on the square device and make sure that that works too. And here we go. So now, of course, the button's at the top, but again, if we tap it, we get the correct shape of the watch face. Excellent. So that's the basics of how we create apps that display and work differently on different watch shapes. In the next video, we're going to be building a rather more useful app called People Counter.